Good morning. And anyone who wants to name these two folks, we're doing a naming contest here. You know, it always, I hope it puts a smile on everyone's face when we look around here and realize today we've done something for our littlest folks, for the child, hopefully in all of us, and for the children who are going to grow up to be the leaders of the great state of California. So I want to thank you all for being here. I'm Hannah Beth Jackson. I'm honored to be the chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus. We wanted to come together today, united in our appreciation for so many who champion child care and the repeal of the maximum family grant. And we will, yes, indeed. The order today, for those of you who would be interested, is that I'm going to welcome everyone. Our Senate President Pro Tem will welcome and speak for a few moments. He's then got to go meet with the governor. Then the Vice Chair, Assembly Member Cristina Garcia, will speak. I believe that, and our Speaker Pro Tem is here. He will also speak perhaps immediately after Assembly Member Garcia. We have a provider, Natasha Finister, here as well. This is really a great moment for all of us who have worked so long and so hard for the children of our state. And we want to thank the leaders of our two houses for their fight to ensure that child care was a priority in this budget. Thank you so much. You know, for many of us, and for the Women's Caucus in particular, child care has been a top priority for us for decades. I remember back in the late 1999 session when we were there until 2 o'clock in the morning, the women of the legislature stood outside of the Republican Caucus Committee shouting, "Child care, child care, child care." We were told we'd do better, however, if we stepped back because they didn't like demonstrations a whole lot. Well, this year we had the voice of our leadership. They had the voice, they had the ear of the governor, and we are all here to celebrate and thank them. And I personally want to thank my vice chair, Cristina Garcia, for her efforts in ensuring that child care was a priority throughout the discussions. And I also want to thank my seatmate, Holly Mitchell, for her continual, persistent, determined, unequivocal support and efforts to repeal the maximum family grant. And mostly, I believe we really need to thank the advocates who came to testify again and again and again on this very important issue. They were the providers and the parents who told their stories and shared their challenges of accessing and affording childcare, because we know for far too many families, childcare is out of reach and rivals the cost of college tuition or monthly rent. This is a staggering fact. The Women's Caucus has made this a priority as part of our Stronger California, securing economic opportunity for all women, which many of you know has 4 pillars of equal pay, family-friendly workplaces, child care, and eradicating poverty. Today, we're going to talk about 2 of those pillars, hence our 2 spokespeople and mascots here today. 2 of these policies which have been embraced on the budget and which we will be voting on tomorrow: child care and working to eradicate poverty with the elimination of the maximum family grant. This year, with the help of all those people and the people standing with us today, we were able to secure a multi-year commitment an investment that will provide over $500 million for child care over the next 4 years. This will ensure that parents can keep earning and children can keep learning. As we have said, child care is education, and a strong start prevents costly academic interventions later on. For the first time in almost a decade, we will be reimbursing child care providers at the market rate And we will be providing close to 9,000 full-day preschool slots for our 4-year-olds over the next 4 years. And what this means when this proposal is ultimately adopted is a much more functional and stable child care system for California's low-income families, one that serves our young children better, our child care workers better, and the needs of working families better. With 70% of mothers working and more than 40% of mothers as the sole or primary breadwinners for their families, earning at least half their family's income, child care is an economic reality for so many families, and making a real investment in early care and education is prudent and wise and makes a strong statement of our commitment to invest in our working families and our children's future. And with that, I would like to invite President Pro Tem Kevin De Leon, after which, if we could have perhaps our Speaker Pro Tem, Mr. Anthony Rendon, and then my colleague and cohorts, starting with my our vice chair, not my vice chair, but I am so proud to have worked with her on this issue, Cristina Garcia. So, Mr. Pro Tem.
Thank you, Hannah Beth Jackson. Thank you, HBJ, for your incredible leadership at the helm of the Women's Caucus, for advocating for working mothers as well as children. Let's give it up for Hannah Beth Jackson. In representation of the Assembly, the Vice Chair, Cristina Garcia, I want to thank you for your passion, for your commitment to this issue. Let's also give it up for Vice Chair Cristina Garcia. The budget that we will collectively vote on in both chambers tomorrow will reflect the values that you all have tirelessly advocated for, because you help strengthen our families. This budget deal includes a significant investment in childcare, $527 million, which includes 9,000 preschool slots, a combination of the general fund as well as Prop 98. It has been the Women's Caucus on both the Senate as well as the Assembly that have been the driving force and are conscious to drive this and make sure that, irrespective of your income level, that women, particularly those at the lowest economic strata, deserve access to quality child care. Over the last 2 years in the legislature, in partnership with the Women's Caucus, we have been able to provide over $800 million for quality child care. We are now giving new parents the opportunity to enter the workforce and giving women who take care of their children the respect and dignity that they deserve. Also, a positive highlight is working together with the Assembly is our expansion of enrollment slots, because we want to make sure for the UC as well as the CSU that these young boys and girls have a real opportunity to achieve and dream big, and one day think that they can actually go to Cal State LA or to Cal or UCLA. Why not? Let's give them that opportunity, not just to have access to quality child care, but to think big and to know that one day they'll actually be attending a 4-year university. With the Assembly and the Senate together, we expand those enrollment slots, and we make sure that we give every opportunity to every single child to make the most of what God has given him or her, that ingenuity, that creativity. Let's make sure we do it here. Another major victory. For 20 years, California's maximum family grant rule has assaulted the dignity of women's rights and left hundreds of thousands of our state's children in abject poverty. MFG will now be repealed in the state of California. And we have Senator Holly Mitchell to thank for that.
Say that part in the mic. Say that part.
She wants me to say she's been on my BUTT for the last 4 years on this one right here. But she's been fantastic. She's been amazing. You know, so I stand here proudly in solidarity with the women here who've been exceptional and incredible. And I want to give a very special recognition to my partner on the other side. That is Speaker Anthony Rendon. Yeah. Both Speaker Rendon as myself, we took our directions, very loud and clear and forcefully from our incredible members of the Women's Caucus. And at the end of the day, when it's about getting into the negotiations and really working this out, I want to give credit where credit is due. And I want to thank you very much for your incredible partnership. With that, thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much. And now the other half of that awesome team, our Speaker Pro Tem Anthony Rendon.
Thank you.
Speaker, did I say President?
Speaker Pro Tem's a good job too. That's a good job too. Good morning. I'm proud to be here today with my colleagues in the Senate and the Assembly, and this tiger and giraffe, which I guess I missed the explanation. They're freaking me out, but it's good to see everyone. We're here today, as has been mentioned, to celebrate two big budget victories that owe a lot of their success to the efforts of the Legislative Women's Caucus. First is $530 million in phased-in increases for early childhood education, for child care and preschool. And then we are repealing the punitive and unsuccessful maximum family grant that harms 130,000 California children in 95,000 families. ECE has been and always will be a priority for me. Research shows that 90% of a child's brain develops in the first 5 years. Children who receive quality childcare at a young age are better prepared for school, have greater math ability, greater thinking and attention skills, and fewer behavioral challenges. Funding cuts to ECE were part of why I first ran for office and how I met Holly Mitchell 15 years ago when she was at Crystal Stairs and I was at MAOF. So I'm enormously proud to be here for my first budget as Speaker, which includes this enormous increase in funding for these vital programs. Our budget agreement includes additional full-day preschool slots and increases reimbursement rates for providers, which have been frozen for 10 years, as well as increases to accounts for the higher minimum wage that we passed earlier this year. In the 1990s, after voters rejected a draconian ballot initiative aimed at families on aid, then Governor Pete Wilson rammed the maximum family grant rule into a budget agreement. Back in the days when the 2/3 requirement made that kind of cynical political leverage possible. The only practical effect the MFG ever had was penalizing children based on their birth order. The Assembly has been trying to rescind this rule for years, as has the Senate, and having the Legislative Women's Caucus focus their efforts on it this year was the key reason that we made it over the finish line. So is having a governor like Jerry Brown who shares the legislature's commitment to lifting Californians out of poverty. Finally, I want to thank Assemblymember Cristina Garcia and Senator Hannah Beth Jackson, the leadership of the Legislative Women's Caucus, for their tireless efforts to boost the ECE, and my good and longtime friend Holly Mitchell for always keeping the repeal of MFG on the front burner, as well as our subcommittee one chairman, Tony Thurman, for developing the innovative financing that made the repeal of the MFG a reality. Again, thank you. This is a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And now the Vice Chair of the Legislative Women's Caucus, Cristina Garcia, who was absolutely tenacious in this budget battle. Cristina.
Thank you to everyone for joining us. We're trying to balance priorities today, and so I'm really grateful that we're here today. We've been talking a lot about the Women's Caucus, and I think this year the Women's Caucus, all of our members have been united with the advocates to make sure this gets done. I always talk about, though, that it's not just the Women's Caucus priority, but it's a priority of all of our colleagues, as we're mothers, we're fathers, we're aunts and uncles, we're providers out there. And so I want to thank my male colleagues who joined us in making this a priority and making this a reality today. We wouldn't have been here on our own. What we're balancing today is symbolic of what millions of California workers and children are doing on a daily basis because of an unsupported child care structure. The governor has given an immense focus on our state's infrastructure, but the Legislative Women's Caucus, along with leadership in both houses, fought to bring attention to our human infrastructure, which has been left behind for the last decade. Tomorrow, both houses will vote on a budget that has two key provisions for the Legislative Women's Caucus and families in our state. As our chairwoman said, one of our caucus pillars for a stronger California, we fought alongside our champion, Senator Holly Mitchell, who I like to say has been fighting to repeal this MFG grant since 1994. This has been a long battle, but one I am proud to have fought alongside her for the last few years as a tireless defender of women and children. Thank you for your voice for all these women. Our biggest ask going into the budget related to childcare this year. We know that strengthening our early learning system in the state's state's best priority buster for this generation and the next. I want to thank my leader, Speaker Anthony Rendon, who from day one came out on behalf of our early childhood education work. They've described me as tenacious, as a fighter, but it's a lot easier when you have a leader with you from the beginning, so I really appreciate that. Establishing a Blue Ribbon Commission to address the overall structure and needs show our commitment to the future. This is a great victory for all of us today and for our working families, but we have some more work to do, and I think that the leadership and the governor are showing their commitment with this Blue Ribbon Commission. I stand proud today of the budget we have coming this year. Creating quality jobs, not poverty jobs, for the child caregivers who are overwhelmingly women and predominantly women of color is common sense. We lose 1/3 of child care providers every year because our system does not support them or enable them to provide their own families. They also have no voice in the system where their expertise and input is sorely needed. Today we start to turn that page and have a new way of doing business here in California. Specifically, this budget increases the license exempt rates from 65% to 75% of the newly increased regional market rate. That hasn't been increased in a decade. Increases to the regional market rate to 75% of the most recent survey, with the intention to move to 85% in the coming years. Increases the state reimbursement rate by 10%. Provides a total of nearly 9,000 full-day slots. This is key, full-day slots to preschool slots over the 4 years, providing access to childcare in other capacities now. These increases reflect the need of childcare workers today. We haven't seen significant increase in rates in over a decade, and they are tied to raising the minimum wage, so we know these rates will continue to rise along the way. Their childcare needs, these childcare increases requested by the Women's Caucus, along with the repeal of the maximum family grant, account for the largest continuous expenditure in the budget. Ladies, Women's Caucus, congratulations on that victory. But this victory isn't us alone. It's been all the advocates, all the parents out there who have been fighting for this for so long, who are dealing with the difficulties on a regular basis. And we're going to continue to grow on today's victories. We know we have slots that we have to work on, and we're all committed to make sure we're working on that. I want to make sure that we're celebrating today, but we realize that we are committing to the road ahead and the future ahead. And I think the Women's Caucus, with our leadership, is committed to the long haul. And we look forward to continuing this partnership that we have developed over the last few years together. Thank you to the parents for being advocates, for taking time from not just your children, but your families and your work to be up here to remind us to do the right thing every day. Really appreciate it. Congratulations.
And there is no champion who has been a greater champion, a more vocal one, a more persistent one than Senator Holly Mitchell.
All right, Holly.
Today's really very surreal for me, and Mr. Speaker, it was the early care and education community that propelled our elected career. And I have to say to you all that this is the budget that I ran for office to vote on. I am beyond thrilled to be able to say goodbye as I cast my vote tomorrow to a rule that's been dubbed in the press as California's worst law. Welfare restrictions such as MFG are relics of a 1990s era belief that women were deliberately having more babies to rake in more benefits, contributing to the offensive and erroneous notion of the welfare queen. Former Governor Pete Wilson was widely quoted and criticized as defending his cuts to welfare by saying that affected families would simply, quote, have less for a six-pack of beer. a quote which demonstrated he both bought into and perpetuated the stereotype of welfare recipients using their grants inappropriately. I was a staff here in the building, and I remember that headline like it was yesterday. I was offended then, and I'm offended today. What we know now, 20 years later, is that MFG failed its stated goal of reducing children born out of wedlock, and instead it has only driven women and their children into deeper poverty in a state that is the 7th largest economy in the world. Much more than the loss of a six-pack, California is at its highest poverty rate since the mid-1990s, the highest rate of children living in poverty nationally, and a generation of children whose opportunities were lost because of this shameful policy. The costs to society are incalculable. It seems Governor Wilson's math was way off. California is willfully and shamefully withholding aid to 134,900 of our most valuable resource, California's children. You've probably heard me say it before, and I'll say it again. Our annual budget is a value statement that reflects on all of us as policymakers and you as voting residents in this state. And for too long, California's children have been undervalued and given the short shrift. But today, I am proud to stand with the Women's Caucus to announce that we've begun chipping away at the injustices of the past and investing in our most precious resource. To quote last year's Sacramento Bee, poverty is an intrinsically humiliating condition, and nobody rises from hardship by being humiliated more. And yet that's what we've done routinely to our poor families with misguided policies and restrictions to critically needed assistance. Policies like the MFG acted to undermine the CalWORKS program, the very program that was created to protect children from slipping deeper into poverty. It was an antiquated policy based on a flawed, racist, sexist, classist hypothesis. Because, as I've said, the woman who would have a baby for an additional $130 a month simply has not been born yet. I want to thank my colleagues in the Women's Caucus for standing with me to push this issue and the greater issue of families in poverty to the forefront of our collective policy and political agenda. I'm going to thank Governor Brown today. My leader, the Senate President Pro Tem, Speaker Rendon, I'm glad this is your first budget as Speaker also, and the thousands of advocates who from the beginning, from the onset of this policy, have walked these halls and done your best to try to educate policymakers about what their action did to impact families in California. Many of you are here today. The thousands of folks who signed on the petition to support SB 23 just this year alone, the momentum we have seen this issue build over the last 5 years is nothing short of extraordinary. And all of you must recognize the role you played in bringing the caring industries, Ms. Aroner, back to the forefront of this political and policy agenda. You all make me glad to be a policymaker today. I said I wouldn't go cry.
Thank you. Thank you. To pretend this isn't emotional would really be to deny our humanity. So we're all very blessed and very honored to be part of this. I would like to invite one of our providers, Natasha Finister, to come up and say a few words about what this means to her.
Good morning. I'm Natasha Finister. I've been a family child care provider for the last 20 years, offering quality child care out of my home in West Hawthorne, California. I am also a member of SEIU Local 99. I became a family child care provider after I graduated from college because I believed then, as I do now, that it is important that children have the opportunity to learn and play in a safe and nurturing environment. But for the last 20 years, family child care provider rates have essentially stayed the same, while the cost of living, from gas to electricity to food, and the cost of running our child cares has skyrocketed. The work I do is indispensable. The care I provide supports the jobs of the mothers and fathers whose children are in my care. They are counting on me to keep my doors open so that they can go to work or school. Oftentimes, I work with parents who struggle to afford the child care. I would never turn them away, but it comes at a great cost to me. Even with the 20 years of experience, I have 2 bachelor degrees, 30 hours of early childhood education, plus a teaching credential, multiple trainings and workshops under my belt. But I still make well below the minimum wage because the child care providers are not covered by the minimum wage laws. Child care providers are constantly living on the edge, and many are forced to accept public assistance because we earn as little as $5 to $8 an hour. It's a shame when we qualify for the same assistance we provide. Finally, after 20 years, I am proud to say the tide is changing. With the budget agreement on child care, California has taken a huge step forward for our children that will pay dividends for generations. We are showing that we are committed to the fight to expand affordable child care until every growing girl and boy has access to the quality early learning experience each deserves, regardless of their background. We are showing that we are committed to women like me who do this career and the mothers we serve. More specifically, for child care providers like myself, this agreement will lead to a direct increase to our payment rates that will get us closer to earning the new minimum wage. This means that more of us will be able to keep our doors open and remain doing this important work. It means that I will be able to afford to pay my staff the new minimum wage. It means that I can afford new materials for the children and take them on more field trips so that they can continue to grow and learn. It means that maybe, just maybe, I can begin to dream of putting some money aside for my own rainy day. I am proud to stand alongside the Women's Legislative Caucus, who have been fearless fighters of child care providers and the families and the children that we serve. I also want to thank Pro Tem Kevin De Leon, Speaker Anthony Rendon, and Governor Brown for making a significant investment that will enable both child care providers like myself and the parents to lift our families out of poverty. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Great remarks. Thank you very much. And on behalf of Sandy and Rosie, I just made that up, but all the children of the state of California, all the providers, all the people who've been fighting hard on these issues for far too long, this is just the beginning. Thank you all for being here.